Getting a lot of rain down in Miami.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was just down there the last couple of days.
Oh, wait, hang on 1 second. Good evening, my friends. Welcome to the show. I am Lou Mongello. It is Wednesday night. It is my favorite night of the week because it is the WDW Radio Live Night in the Box. Thank you so very much for joining us. If you are not watching live, you're watching the replay, don't forget to come by every Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And tonight is actually a very, very special night because we're going to do something I've actually never really done this way before. We have had guests in studio, we've gone out to studio, but tonight we're going to do a follow-up actually to a podcast episode for a few reasons. One, I really, really enjoyed talking with my guest. Two, I know he has way more stories to tell. Three, you have questions. I think he's going to have answers. And he also has something special that he wants to share with you, with us tonight. So again, if you're watching live, sit back, relax, grab a snack, tag a friend in the comments, tweet out that you're listening, and do me a favor, if I can make the technology work right, welcome, or should I say welcome back, Dave Bossert to the show. Dave, good to see you.
Hi, Lou. Thanks very much for having me back on. I really appreciate it. I had such a great time talking to you. I felt like we could have just kept talking for hours.
Yeah, I know it was a blast to chat with you, and it's funny, the recovering lawyer in me always does a lot of prep before a show, right? So I had all kinds of questions, all kinds of things, and then the more I talked to you, the more I wanted to chat about because you just had so many fascinating stories, and as we chatted and as we finished, we said, we should do something else together. And then as I was getting questions from listeners, this just made a lot of sense to continue our conversation live, give them a chance to ask you questions as well, and then we can sort of save that surprise and some of those stories for later. So as we give people a chance to walk in, really, I want to let you know that Ron Cohey told me, he just texted me to make sure that I said hello to you, and so did Lon Smart.
Well, tell those guys I said hi. One of these days I'll be back down in Orlando and I'll hopefully see them. And maybe I'll see them at D23. I don't know.
Oh, that would be
And by
awesome.
the way, Lou, I know I told you the last time we talked on the podcast that I wasn't going to be at D23. Well, I'm going to tell you, and this is like the first that like I'm sort of saying it publicly now, but yes, I am going to be there. I'll be there Saturday afternoon and Sunday. I'm actually flying in from another state to be there and sign some books. My special edition Oswald, the Lucky Rabbit, The Search for the Lost Disney Cartoons, the special edition version is actually being released at the D23 show.
Oh,
So
that's
that's going to
awesome.
be available for people. So I'll be there. I'll be able to sign copies and whatnot and say hi to people. And it's always a great event to go to because I see so many people I know.
I'm sure. One of the things I love about Expo is it's not just the Disney people and the company people and the industry people, but it allows sort of fans to come together on one show floor and sort of on equal footing. And as we were saying before we went live, like, whether you are a fan or a cast member, it really is the place to be if you're passionate about all things Disney.
Absolutely, without question.
So let's one of the things we didn't get a chance to talk about was the Oswald was Oswald, and obviously your Oswald book, which even the original one is beautiful. The Oswald is so interesting because he was a trivia question, right? He was sort of that people didn't really know about him many years ago, and all of a sudden there was this newfound love for the oldest character. But I think you may have even alluded to there's still a lot of Oswald that, although we have, is lost, right? Because correct me if I'm wrong, weren't people able to like rent 16 millimeter like films, Oswald films, and bring them. So people literally might have some of these lost Oswald shorts in their grandmother's attic.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I have to tell you, and I'm just going to step away from my my camera here for a second, Lou, because I've got the copy of the special edition. I don't know if you can see that. Make sure it's not getting cut off. But and I always get a kick out of it. But I received I think it was 20 copies of it today. It was waiting for me when I got home from Miami. And,
which probably weighed about 500 pounds, because that's a big, heavy book.
It is a big, heavy book. It's crazy, but we did do an update because the original version of the book that was out there, a guy in Japan, an 85-year-old Disney fan, I mean, total Disney fan. In fact, he sent me a copy of a letter he got from Walt Disney back in the 50s. He had corresponded with Walt from Japan, and Walt wrote him a nice note back and signed it. I mean, it's really pretty amazing story. But this guy found, well, I should say he purchased back in the early 1950s some 16 millimeter cartoons. Wow. And it turned out, because of my Oswald book, he was able to find or realize that he had one of these lost cartoons. And so it was really kind of a thrill to be able to find Ride 'em Plowboy, which was one of the lost cartoons. This guy had a copy of it.
And how many?
It wasn't a complete copy, by the way. It was like a 2-minute copy.
Right, but how many shorts do you estimate are still missing?
Well, even though this 2-minute chunk of that one cartoon showed up, there's still like 4 or 5 minutes of it missing. So I still consider that a missing cartoon, even though we have a piece of it. And that was kind of exciting. But there's a total of 7 that are still missing. 6, if you want to say that this one was kind of found, But he was kind enough to let me, he was kind enough to actually send me some high-res scans, and we added those to the book, which was really nice.
And when you guys, when Disney has found some of these over the years, do people donate them to the company? Like, how does it? Donate. I wanted to use air quotes when I said donate.
Oh, you jest, Luke.
Out of the kindness of their hearts, I'm sure.
Actually, people have felt like they had a lottery ticket.
Right.
that somehow they had something that Disney wanted, and that they were going to retire off of it, which is not the case. I mean, certainly these lost cartoons, to me, they're not so much valuable from a dollar standpoint as they are valuable from a historic standpoint. Right. And really the significance of Oswald is that it taught Walt a very valuable lesson about owning his IP, his intellectual property. He never owned Oswald. His producer owned it, Charles Mintz, and ultimately Universal owned it. And so Walt lost the contract. A lot of people have the misconception that Walt lost the rights to the cartoon, but he didn't lose the rights. He never had the rights to it, and so it was his producer taking the character from him and not giving him another contract to do another group of shorts with Oswald, and because of that incident, it prompted Walt to create Mickey Mouse, and Walt vowed after that incident to own his characters, to not ever not own them, you know.
One of my favorite parts of the story is how Disney got it back, because it was almost like, a draft day trade. Okay, will you give us Oswald, and we'll give you Al Michaels. Like, poor Al Michaels got traded for a cartoon character.
Yeah, but you know something, I think that was a fun story that the press picked up on, but was not really the true story behind it, because it really was Bob Iger, the CEO of the Walt Disney Company's doing to bring back Oswald, and the opportunity presented itself that with Al Michaels wanting to go over to NBC from ESPN. And so to make that all happen, Bob threw the Oswald into the mix to make that deal happen. And frankly, Universal wasn't really doing anything with it. In fact, the funny story is that a number of the top executives over at Universal, when they first heard about Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, they were like, "Oswald who?" They go, "Do we own that?" They didn't even know they owned it. And by the way, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I said Ride and Plowboy, but it was the film Neck and Neck that surfaced in Japan, and it surfaced because of my book, and that was really kind of a cool thing, especially in Japan, because the gentleman that had the print was a big fan of Disney, and he was able to, from the script information we had in the book, determine, along with a friend of his from a film museum in Japan, they were able to determine they thought it was Neck and Neck. And what was really cool about that was that they reached out to me, and I communicated with them via email, and they sent me a QuickTime movie of what they had, and I was able to verify that it was in fact Neck and Neck that they had. But it was listed. It was a 2-minute piece of the film, and it had a title card that said Speedy Mickey. So it was sold as actually like a Mickey short, but it
so they didn't have just an abbreviated. They actually had an abbreviated version of the short that was just released under a different name.
Correct, and it was very common. It was very common back in those days for them to chop up some of these films and put them out as small reels of 16 millimeter for home use. There was actually in the 30s a very thriving market of people being able to rent 16 millimeter copies. And so a lot of the films that we have found, a lot of the Lost Oswald cartoons we've been able to find around the world, have mostly been 16 millimeter, although there's been a few surviving 35 millimeter prints that we were able to find. Out of Africa Before Dark was a beautiful 35 millimeter nitrate negative that was being lovingly cared for at the Austrian Film Museum in Europe. So, but it's I often tell people, without Oswald, we may never have had Mickey, because could you imagine if Walt had a great relationship with his producer and he just kept doing Oswald cartoons, he might not have created Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, I always say sometimes born out of the greatest challenges are the greatest wins and the greatest victories. And it's funny, as you were saying that, the renting to 16, I was like, wow, they were actually doing that. Well, I should say Disney Plus before the renting of movies at home was in vogue.
Are you there?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I just lost you for a second. Yeah, I think that was the early home entertainment. You fired up the projector, and you ran 16 millimeter prints.
Right. It made me think, running out to Blockbuster Video to go out and get it while you're running out and getting your 16 millimeter print. By the way, for those of you who are watching live, if you have a question for Dave, put it in the comments. I'm monitoring the comments here. I know a couple of people emailed me beforehand when they heard that we were doing this. Somebody had actually, a couple of people, Dave, had asked me, because I think you or I may have alluded to it in our podcast interview, but didn't really talk about much on the show. In addition to working on films and shorts, you also did some work in the Disney theme parks, correct?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, my last 12, 15 years at the company, I was doing projects across the company, including a lot of stuff for the theme parks. Some of the big ones were World of Color, the Dwarf Mine Train roller coaster down in Orlando. Paris Dreams, big outdoor spectacular at Paris Disneyland. We did a similar outdoor show, big spectacular for Disney Seas, and then there was tons of others. They did an enclosed queue line for the Peter Pan ride down in Orlando. We did some stuff for that, and it was literally hundreds of projects.
So what kind of work were you doing in the theme parks particularly, and how did you sort of make that transition from, the 2D-ish animation to sort of working in 3 dimensions in the parks?
Well, I mean, while I was Disney Animation working on features, I was not only doing 2D, but I was also doing 3D. So I was doing a lot of CG elements for the various features, like the Pocahontas' canoe. We were doing a lot of particle system animation that we integrated with 2D animation in Fantasia 2000. So there was a fairly broad array of techniques that I was using throughout those years. So crossing over to theme parks really wasn't that difficult, because what we were doing was, I headed up a special projects unit, and I was the producer, creative director, and I worked with, along with my team, we worked with the Imagineer teams working on these different projects, and we supplied the animation components. So, for instance, with World of Color, Steve Davidson was the show designer, show creator, show director, whatever you want to call him. Terrific guy, really creative, and we worked with him to deliver the projection elements that were going to be used on the water screens during that show. And a lot of that, my philosophy was I never wanted it to be a clip show. Like if we were going to show, really familiar sections of films, how can we do that in a different way? Right. How can we present that to the guests in a new way? For instance, we took the whole skating business with Bambi on Ice. From the movie, which is a series of scenes, and we actually stitched it together into one long scene and added a bridge animation that matched what those great animators had done back in the day, as they say. So, to me, working on theme park attractions was our group was part of a larger team of people. You had engineers, you had, lighting specialists, projection specialists, and so you integrated with this team of people. And it was really gratifying because it was an opportunity to learn a lot about how these shows got put together at the parks and these attractions, how they're built and all of that.
So you mentioning the parks and the people that are behind it, the Imagineers, the incredible creativity, and those people that transitioned from animation early on, has me thinking of some people in particular. And one of the things that I love is that you've dipped your hand in so many different mediums, from the animation to the theme park attractions. You're the author of, we talked about a number of your books, your Roy Disney book, the Eric Goldberg book, the Art of Tennessee Lovelace, and obviously the Oswald the Lucky Rabbit book. But we did tease ahead of time that there may or may not be another, dare I say, secret project that you have been working on that you want to share, that you didn't want to share on the show, that you wanted to save and share for the people who are watching live tonight.
Yes, absolutely. So, and I appreciate that you're giving me this opportunity, because Oftentimes I take on projects that I consider passion projects. I mean, everybody has those passion things that they want to do, and it doesn't matter, how they're going to do it. They just have to do it. And so I've got a number of books that I'm working on that are going to be published out over the next couple of years. But one book that I really wanted to do was a book on Claude Coates, and I had gone about it like I did with all my other books, and I put together a pitch document that's 8, 10, 12 pages, giving a synopsis of what the book is, what I think the index for the book is going to be, how we would lay it out, examples of the type of work that visuals that are going to go into the book and all of that. And so we went out and pitched that book, and my agent pitched it several times, and actually 3 times. We went twice to the same publisher and once to a licensee of that publisher, and we got the same sort of response. Was sort of a we're not sure he has enough name recognition. And I just thought to myself, you have to be kidding me, because Claude Coates worked for the Walt Disney Company for 54 years. I mean, that's astounding. 54 years he worked for the Walt Disney Company, and he was one of the original Imagineers that Walt Disney walked into his office and said, Claude, you're going to start working on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride before Disneyland opens.
Right, the legendary story of sort of literally tapping these artists and animators on the shoulders and saying, you're going to work on a theme park attraction, and they say, I'm not a theme park designer. He's like, you are now.
But you see, the thing about Claude Coates, a lot of people don't realize, was that Claude had trained as an architect. So not only was he an incredible painter, but he trained at USC as an architect. So he was really one of those rare individuals at the studio who could visualize things in 3 dimension, and that's something that Walt could see in him. And when Claude was working on Lady and the Tramp, he actually built little 3-dimensional models of some of the locations so that they could use a flashlight to see how the light was going to spill through and all of that kind of stuff. And so here's this guy who Walt handpicks to be one of the original Imagineers. And Claude goes on to help get Mr. Toad's Wild Ride finished and actually painted some of the flats that are in the ride. Right?
Did he work?
He painted the mural at the entrance,
Oh, no kidding.
To that ride. And people can see that, by the way, if you post the link to the Indiegogo campaign we're doing. And so let me get to that. I just want to tell you guys what's happening with that. So we get turned down on doing a book about Claude Coates. In fact, somebody suggested, well, he's really just a chapter in a book about Imagineers. And I'm like, no, he's not. This guy deserves his own book. And so I'm working with Alan Coates, who's Claude's son and represents the estate, the Claude Coates estate. And so what we're doing is we launched an Indigo campaign a few days ago, and it's called Walt Disney's. It's really what we're calling this is essentially. The title of the book is tentatively Walt Disney's Imagineer Claude Coates, The Making of Disneyland from Toad Hall to the Haunted Mansion and Beyond. And what we want to focus on in that book is that first 15 years of Disneyland, Claude contributed to not only Toad Hall, but Peter Pan. He also was the lead Imagineer I mean, you can see a little video on our Indiegogo page of Walt actually, coming up and saying, "This is Claude Coates, the lead Imagineer for the guy in charge of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride." So you sit there and you look at Claude's filmography, and what do you see? You see the seminal rides.
Right.
You see Toad Hall. You see, Peter Pan. You see Pirates of the Caribbean, the Sub Ride, the Haunted Mansion, which was the first major attraction they put in at Disneyland after Walt's death. This guy is a titan. As far as I'm concerned, in the history of the company, not only for his incredible backgrounds that he did, he did the color styling and backgrounds for the Old Mill. That film, that short, won an Academy Award. Walt really saw what Claude could do with backgrounds and put him in charge of the wishing well sequence in Sleeping Beauty. He went on to do those incredible backgrounds for Geppetto's Workshop in Pinocchio. He did work on Pleasure Island, the Pleasure Island sequence. So he spends his first 20 years in the animation department and then crosses over and he spends 34 years as an Imagineer. And not only in the creation of Disneyland, but then translating a lot of those rides, a lot of those attractions that he did at Disneyland, he then created versions for at Walt Disney World, in Orlando, and at Paris Disneyland, and of course Tokyo. So, I mean, this guy has an incredible career, but he was a very soft-spoken man, and I had the pleasure of knowing him. I actually met him at Imagineering back in the 80s. It was the tail end of his career, and it was the beginning of my career. And I chatted with him a couple times a week in the Imagineering commissary for 18 months, 2 years before he retired.
Yeah, and as you look through not just his filmography, where he worked on so many of the classics, but it really is sort of a who's who in terms of theme park attractions, in terms of some of the true classics from Disneyland and Walt Disney World. Look, I was a kid who loved and still misses things like If You Had Wings. So his fingerprint, is imprinted on a lot of the originals. And I think people don't realize too, Dave, that Claude Coates isn't just, and as people say his name, they're like, wait, isn't he the guy? Doesn't he have the headstone in the Haunted Mansion somewhere? But he also,
Yes.
As we start to approach the anniversary and Epcot Center, he worked on Universe of Energy and Horizons and World of Motion, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was very integral in Epcot. This is a story that has to be told. And, when you sit there and you look at some of the books that come out on Disney, how many books on Pinocchio can we really take? You know what I mean? How many books on Snow White do we want? And why don't we bring out some fresh material and, a book on Claude Coates? There's 3 books on Mark Davis, because he was one of the 9 old men. Claude Coates was a real quiet individual. He wasn't out there tooting his horn like some of the other guys were doing. And to me, I don't want to see him get, sort of lost in the shuffle, so to speak. And not only that, I think, at the Walt Disney Company, if it was 30 years ago, it would have been a no-brainer decision to give this guy his own book.
Sure.
And now it's a very different place, and there's people that really don't know who he is and believe me, my last couple of years at the company, I heard some people ask who the 9 old men were.
Right.
So you start to, the place becomes a little bit less interested in its past. And I think it's worth documenting some of these people and some of the contributions that they made to the company.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a shame that they passed as early as they did, because I think one thing that Disney started to do, I don't want to say relatively late, because again, social media and the access that we have now is relatively speaking new, and I applaud as we come up to things like Expo, places like D23, bringing some of these folks, these creatives, these Imagineers, these artists, Sherman Brothers, who maybe people had never known their names or had seen them before, bringing them to events, showcasing them on their website. So there is that connection that we have. And I think, unfortunately, when Claude Coast, passed so early on, there has been that disconnect. So that your book is going to do what needed to be done, which is bridge that gap between a name that people may have heard of before or, again, seen on a Haunted Mansion tombstone, but really don't understand the significant impact and influence that he had on the attractions and on the films.
Yeah. No, and I completely agree. I mean, look, I've been fortunate because I've been able to write and publish a bunch of books through, different publishers. But when it comes to a passion project, I just, if I feel so strongly about it, I can't take no as the answer.
Right.
So we did our due diligence. We went out, we pitched it 3 times to 2 publishers. And we got the rejection. So from that point, I just said, hey, let's go do it ourselves. I did that with the Weber book, the Ken Weber book. A lot of people felt it was a niche topic. My agent even thought it was a niche topic. And I still felt as though the Weber book was, to me, it was a document of that furniture, because the people who were using it, this last generation of 2D artists that were using that furniture, they're slowly disappearing.
Right.
And so, having a record of it, I think, is important. And so that's why we decided, let's go just do this book ourselves. And what we're asking is, we believe that there's 1,000 fans out there who are willing to say, I'll pre-order that book for $40. It's 20% off the cover price. If we can get 1,000 people to do the book for $40, we're going to deliver them a beautiful, beautiful book.
Yeah, and I was showing, as you were talking, I was scrolling through the Indiegogo site and some of the images that you have that you'll be sharing in the book as well, not just of Claude's work, but Claude and Yale Gracie, and Claude and Walt, and Claude and John Hench and Mary Blair.
Yeah. And these are, there's some wonderful material with the Claude Coates estate. Some of it, literally, he was given some of this stuff by Walt himself. Frankly, the guy was an accomplished painter on his own. In fact, if people look at some of the perks that we've been able to put together on the page, at certain levels, people are going to be able to get a G. Clay of a Claude Coates painting that's estate signed and numbered and certificate of authenticity. And I think some of those images are just stunning.
Yeah.
I hope people take a moment to take a look at it. His 1933 watercolor paintings from Taos, New Mexico. There's one image, if you're looking at the page, Lou.
I have it up now.
It's called Across the Way. It's at the $250 perk level.
Okay.
And that image, that painting, is actually of the Hollywood Hills across from the studio. Now this goes back to the 1940s, okay? And this painting is of what is now, if people are familiar with the studio, the Burbank studio, it's if you're looking to the south of the studio, across the freeway, there's now the Pine Lawn Cemetery over there. but that was an old horse ranch, that property. And that painting is what Claude painted of that area. So there's some beautiful perks in there. And again, all I can say is I'm hoping, I have my fingers crossed that there's 1,000 fans out there that are willing to pre-order the book, because if they do, we're going to deliver them a gorgeous book that it's going to be filled with stuff they've never seen before.
Well, a number of people are already saying, Sophie Kravitz is saying that she is getting it. Let me go back. Beatrice Dennis says, thank you for writing the history so that we don't lose the details. Kimberly Linkletter, a number, yes, I'm quickly scrolling back. Chris Bannis, loving these kind of stories. Aaron Morgan, it's a great idea, Dave. So glad you took on this project. Yeah, a lot of people are commenting, I'm sure, going over this as well.
You know something? I have to say thank you to all of those folks that are listening in on this, and I appreciate those comments. I really want people to take action on this. We have until, I think, September 26th in order to hit our goal. And if we hit that goal, we're going to be able to do this book and do it the way a book should be done. I mean, the book itself is going to be a beautiful piece of art. And all I can say is that, you know, Claude deserves this. You know, after all of the work he had done over 54 years at the Walt Disney Company, the least we could do is celebrate this guy's life in a book. You know, and that's what Alan Coates and I are going to do. And I got full cooperation of the Claude Coates family. They're fully behind this. And, you know, I think that, you know, we're thrilled and excited because we've been getting a lot of great comments as well.
Yeah. Kimberly Linkletter, Fred Abley, Patricia Carlson, Troy Houghton, all saying that they're getting the book, something to pass on to future generations. Such a great piece of history. Bill Daniel ordering it from the SIM, and I'm linking in the comments as well to the Indiegogo site. Michael Goldtrap says, this is a book that's long overdue. Thank you, Dave. And I love the fact that you mentioned that the family is behind it too. I'm sure that they have been waiting and hoping that somebody would share these stories. I think there's nobody else better to do it than you.
And by the way, this is a little funny backstory of how this all came about, Lou. I belong to a group called the Hyperion Historical Alliance, the HHA. And it started out more than a decade ago as sort of a loose group of Disney historians that would get together once a year and in between would help each other out with different research projects and stuff like that. Well, it's evolved. There's like 120 people, and there's an annual conference. And I think it was about 3 years ago, I was at the conference. It was at the Castaways in Burbank. And I'm walking along, and a tall gentleman is coming towards me. And he looks down at my name badge, and he goes, "Oh, I just got your Destino book." And I just catch his name. It says Alan Coates on his name badge. And I said, "Thank you." He said he had picked up my book at Barnes & Noble. And then, you know, the conference started, and at the morning break, I went and asked a few people, could you introduce me to Alan? I don't really know him. I think he's got to be Claude's son. And so the president of the organization, who I talked to, said, "Oh, Alan went home. He wasn't feeling well." And I said, damn, I really wanted to talk to him because I just wanted him to know that I had known his father at the studio at Imagineering and had many great conversations with his father. And I just wanted to tell Alan, you know, your dad was an incredible gentleman, really approachable, nice man, was very open and giving. And, you know, all the questions I had for him over the year and a half, 2 years that we were seeing each other in the commissary in the mornings, I just wanted to tell Alan that and say, you know, your dad was a wonderful guy. And so we wound up having lunch at the Talleyrand at Burbank, which is almost like a second commissary for Disney. You run into so many people there, you know. But we wound up having a conversation over lunch. And by the end of lunch, Alan said, "Would you be interested in writing a book about my dad?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, of course I would." I mean, and at that time, maybe I was naive, but I thought it was a slam dunk. I thought, "Oh my gosh, I'll put together a pitch document and I'll get with my agent and we'll go out to the publishers, and this is a no-brainer." And so it was very frustrating and disappointing to hear from some people that, he didn't have enough name recognition, and the way the publishing world operates now is that, with these large publishers, it's the sales force that's making decisions. And that's a shame, because some of the salespeople, they're just out there shoveling product. They don't care what it is as long as they can sell it.
Right.
And if you come along and say, "Hey, I want to do a book on Claude Coates," some of these people are like, "Who the heck is Claude Coates? I don't know who he is. I can't sell that book." You know what I mean? So, and maybe that's why we're getting 4 or 5 books on Pinocchio or Snow White or whatever. But I just have to sit there and go. I think back and I say, when Steve Jobs said, "I want to create an iPod where people would download their digital music," he didn't listen to all the people going, "Why would I do that? I have all my CDs."
Well, and look, fortunately, we live in an age where not only can you self-publish and put a book out on Amazon, but look, I love things like Kickstarter and Indiegogo and these crowdfunding, because the people that help make these projects come to life are the ones who have a true, not just vested financial interest, but they have an emotional interest in it too. They want to see these projects come to life because they believe in the stories. They obviously believe in the person who's putting them together. And it almost tastes better, right? It almost tastes better because it's funded by the people who truly love it.
All I can say is, if we can get 1,000 people to do this, honestly, this is a story. This is one of those books. This is like, I don't know if you're familiar with Bob Gurr.
Sure. Yeah.
Bob Gurr decided he was going to do a book, and he did it on himself.
Right.
It was Bob Gurr's book about himself, right. And he did 2,000 copies. That was it. And if you want to try and get a copy of that, it's like $700 now. And by the way, I interviewed Bob Gurr because he knew Claude very well, and so I've already, Alan and I have been doing interviews with tons of folks, and Bob was one of the guys we did an interview with. And when I walked into Bob Gurr's house, he had a Mr. Toad's Wild Ride ride vehicle in his dining room.
Who doesn't, really, at this point?
Who wouldn't want that in their dining room? Right. I would. But Bob Gurr was a funny guy, because he was. I said to him, I go, "Bob, why don't you just do your book through Disney Publishing?" He goes, "Why?" He goes, "I cut out the middleman. I did my own book."
And I remember when it came out, like,
God love him. He's 85, 87 right. years old.
He and like Margaret Carey are ageless and timeless, and they sort of created these second careers for themselves, going out and doing the thing. And what I love about Bob, well, there's a lot of things I love about Bob. One of the things I love about Bob is it clearly comes from a place of passion. And obviously, the farther they get away from their time at the company, sometimes the more free they are in terms of telling the stories that they want to tell and the way they want to tell it. And I remember Bob, seeing him at an event and talking, and there he was, like, with a sack full of books, which I have a red copy and I have a blue copy of his book, because I love the fact that he did it on his own.
Put those in the safe. Put those in the safe. They're very valuable.
You said $700, and I kind of looked at the corner of my eye.
Lou, I am so excited right now, because as we've been talking, I want to give a shout out to Becky. I don't want to use her last name, but Becky knows who she is. I know Becky.
We all, trust me, everybody knows Becky.
We all know Becky, right? Becky just nearly doubled our raise at this point. Okay? I mean, all I can say, Becky, I love you. Thank you. Okay? Thank
Just
you.
so you know, Dave, I'm now never going to hear the end of this.
Okay, but I hope if you have Becky's email, you can certainly share my email with her.
I will.
Okay,
And Becky and I.
because
So I don't know if you know. So Becky and I have had a partnership and a friendship for 11 plus years. We'll be sharing a booth together at Expo, so you
okay.
can definitely come by. She'll be the one on the throne with the crown with a cocktail in her hand. There'll be a long line of processional in front of her. But don't tell her she's good people. But don't tell her I said that.
I have to tell you, there are so many good people out there in the Disney universe. There's so many great fans, so many great supporters, and something. It makes all of us that are writing these books and doing these projects, whether it's a documentary or a book or whatever it is, out speaking. It's a joy to talk to those folks because they're interested as well in preserving the history, and that's something that I think is so vitally important. And what's interesting too is that there are still tons of stories to be told about Disney. There's still plenty of aspects that have not been dived into in any depth. And by the way, the Kem Weber book is a perfect example of that. And one of the wonderful things I got a note. I think I may have mentioned this to you in the last time we talked. I got a wonderful note from somebody at the Walt Disney Animation Studios operations group, and he sent me a lovely note saying that because of the book I wrote on the Weber furniture, they were actually able to identify a couple of pieces in the warehouse that they didn't know what they were. And they were able to identify them because of the book. And that just wouldn't have happened. And I'm afraid and sad to say that at some place along the line, somebody would have just said, well, let's just get rid of that stuff. It's junk. But now it's identified. They know what it is, and it's not junk. And my hope is that they'll keep and preserve at least one example of each of the pieces of furniture that Weber designed for the studio. So, to me, this is just hugely important, I think, for all of us collectively as a community to try and document a lot of this material, because it's a great story. It's a great American story. And it's a great story of now a global entertainment enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, somebody was just saying how important Disney is, just on a global perspective in terms of entertainment. And look, you've got to feel great about having your work having that kind of impact and sort of getting that feedback. It's probably one thing to work on a movie or an attraction or an animated film or a project of that magnitude, but to work on something, whether it's a book or whatever, and be able to hear back from people who you've impacted. And look, you talk about preserving these stories. That's exactly what, especially this book, Dave, because there is nothing else out there, save for maybe an article here or there online about CLAUDE. And as we were talking, and I think if you want, when the book comes out, one of the things I've loved to do on the show over the past 15 plus years is talk about these people in depth. I have not talked about in my Legends of Imagineering series, Claude Coates. You would certainly be the guy to come and do it if you'd like.
Well, and not only that, Lou, I will tell you that if we want to set that up in a couple of months or something, I'll have Alan Coates join us.
Oh, even better. That would be great.
Because, Alan Coates, by the way, is an Imagineer in his own right. So he was an Imagineer himself, and he actually worked with his dad on a number of projects. Huh. So, you've got essentially two generations of Imagineers from the company. And again, I sit there and say, all of these projects that I get involved with because I really am passionate about wanting to do them. Nobody's telling me I have to do it. I don't have to do anything. I could pick and choose what I want to do. But to me, this is a passion, is to celebrate some of these lesser known artists for their contributions to what has turned into, an entertainment enterprise that is, touching billions. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can't even say millions anymore. Billions of people globally, and I mean, how many generations have enjoyed Snow White or Bambi or Fantasia or Pinocchio and will continue to enjoy those films. And the people that created those films, they all deserve to be celebrated for their contributions,
Yeah, and there's a lot of people. Bill Daniel just said he bought his copy. William Krasinski says, realizing that there are people about the history like this makes me so very happy. Chris Anderson just became a backer as well. Carolyn,
and you know what? Lou, I'm going to sit here and tell all of those folks, thank you from the bottom of my heart, because part of this has to do with really proving that there is an audience for these books, that it isn't just some salesperson going, I don't know who that is, I can't sell that book, forget it. This is really about the fans speaking up and saying, yes, I can do that. I almost feel like I started to flash on, I feel like you and I are doing a Jerry Lewis telethon. Right. You know what I mean? I feel like, Lou, let's go to the board.
That's right. Let's refresh the tote board and see how we're doing on the Indiegogo campaign. And I actually have been refreshing it in the background, and obviously have seen, as I'm sure you have been, seeing the number going up. So that's got to make you feel good.
It's absolutely going up. It's jumping. Did I mention that I love Becky? I'll mention it again. I love Becky. I can't wait to see her. I'm going to give her a big hug. But it's heartwarming to see that happening, because it tells me that, yes, there are people out there that want this book. And again, I just think it's hugely important for people to participate and to be a part of this, and to really help us honor some of these people who are no longer with us, that made such huge contributions to things that we're all enjoying today.
Chris Anderson says, no, thank you, Dave. Without you, a lot of this history might be lost. And Aaron King said, this is why this is a family. Somebody said, I have a dream, but we need the support to do it. Buford Bryce here, I'll put a link in again on exactly how and where to get your copy. And I'll obviously post it on Facebook and throughout social as well, too, and we'll keep this momentum going in terms of...
Yeah, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to actually put it up on my Facebook and other social platforms today and tomorrow. It'll start going up. But I really wanted to just get out there and just tell people, this is something that we need to do. And by the way, the reason why we picked this week, just so you know, this Friday, August 9th, 50th anniversary of the Haunted Mansion.
There's a lot of Lou Mongello that wishes he was out in Disneyland this week because of all the good stuff they're doing to celebrate.
In fact, Alan Coates was at an Imagineers retirees luncheon today, and he was telling people about the campaign today. But on Friday, Alan is going to be down in Anaheim doing a special event off property at one of the non-Disney hotels. There's a panel discussion with him and Tom Morris and I think a couple other folks about the Haunted Mansion, and he's going to be telling everybody about our effort to do a book on CLAUDE. And so I think this is, this to me, grassroots effort, and I would ask everybody who's participating, please Put it out to your social networks. Link to WDW Radio. Get the word out there to people, because we can do this as a community. We can determine what books are going to be made, not some salesperson who doesn't know the history of the company,
Yeah, and people are doing it. They're talking about sharing it on their social. Those who are going to D23, help spread the word about the books. Share it on your Twitter feeds. Keith Groshan says, hello from a fellow SUNY Farmingdale grad.
Hello. That was the first college I went to, the State University of New York at Farmingdale on Long Island. I was in an advertising art program back right after I graduated high school, and I was there for a year, and then I transferred to Cal Arts out in Los Angeles, where I did the character animation program that was sponsored by Disney, and then ultimately got hired at Disney. So thank you, a fellow SUNY alumni.
SUNY Farmingdale pumps out a lot of. I mean, Keith is also crazy talented, so they're pumping out some amazing talents there too. So Keith says he was a graphic design major.
Yeah, a lot of the state universities across the country have great programs and really great instructors.
Yeah, and Maggie Fagan Haggard says, "I'm going to share this out in several Disney groups. Disney fans are the best." So I agree.
Fantastic. Fans. You know what? Disney fans are the best because they actually really love not only visiting the parks and watching the movies, they also love the history behind it all, and that to me is what makes the whole Disney universe so special, is that you've got all of these people who are, interested not only in enjoying an attraction or enjoying the movies, but understanding, how they were made and who was involved and the history behind it all, That's part of the fun of it.
Yeah, and I'm looking through right now. I have to make sure I get my copy too. It's just a matter of figuring out there's different levels. You can get a signed book with note cards. There's an art print. There's large arts. There's a book dedication, larger print, as well as tours and other enhanced experiences as well. So everybody is talking about sharing. I will obviously share it all on social as well, and we'll continue the push when I see. Oh, there they are. There you go,
Lou. Here's a set of note cards. These are the note cards of Claude's 1933 trip to Taos, New Mexico, and he did a whole bunch of watercolor paintings. There's a beautiful firehouse, and there's a cowboy going to church. He did all these wonderful, beautiful watercolor paintings, and we were able to. Sorry, that's upside down. We were able to reproduce these into a nice set of note cards. There's a little description on the back of them, and at the $60 perk, you get a signed copy of the book, and you get a set of these note cards.
Nice.
I mean, I think personally, I love writing thank you notes, and I'll probably write a handwritten thank you note on a note card to Becky, just so you know.
Beatrice says, this is so exciting. You have my support. I can't wait to have my copy and share all the information. Her Majesty says lots of cool options at several different price levels. Beautiful artwork. Yeah, a lot of kind words coming through on the comments as well.
I really appreciate it, and I hope people take a look at some of those perks and take a look at some of the G clays. Some of these are Claude Coates' personal artwork. There's a beautiful painting of the Neva River in St. Petersburg, Russia. Claude traveled the world and painted everywhere he went. The guy was just a tremendous talent. One of my favorite photos, by the way, I sent to you is Claude with Baloo down at Walt Disney World. I don't know if you could put that up on the Facebook page for people to see, but that photo is just amazing because you could see how tall Claude was. He's like 6'7",
Right.
so it really strikes you when you're standing next to Baloo,
Yeah, there you go. I'll
right?
share it.
Baloo is such a tall
Right.
walk-around character. Isn't that a great picture?
Yeah, it's great. That's great. I love it, man. And from the first moment that I started talking to you, I just love how your passion and the fact that you're a fan first comes out. The things that you do come from such an authentic place, and it comes through. And that's why I loved having you on the show. I love doing this live, and certainly want to continue to do stuff at Expo as well.
You know something? I love the fact that you had me on for a podcast, and I also really enjoyed coming on to do this Facebook Live. I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever done a Facebook Live before, but this is great. And I also enjoy talking with you, Lou, because you really understand it. You understand the Walt Disney Company. You understand the fan universe, the Disney universe, whatever we want to call this. And also, you're from New Jersey, so you're from the tri-state area, so you're like a brother. You know what I mean?
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. And as I told you, I will do anything I can to help you. Pamela says Dave and Lou have the same type of energy as well. So yeah, like this is it's a great project. I love the stuff that you do and the history that you are preserving as well.
Yeah, and you know something, there's plenty more to do, I think. There's lots of other stories that haven't been told. I've been, like I said early on in this broadcast, I'm working on multiple projects right now, and there's much more to tell. And I'm excited about that. I think that there's so many just cool aspects of this company, and some of those stories are going to start to come out over the next few years, and I'm thrilled that I have the opportunity to be able to spend even more time working on those kinds of projects.
Well, this is great, and anything I can do to help. And maybe what I'll do is maybe I'll have to get 2 copies, one for myself, and then maybe one I'll give away to somebody from the community as a prize one week after it comes out.
Well, you know something, Lou? Speaking of giving away, I'm happy to give away one of these to an audience member. This is the special edition. This will not be available until August 27th. And I just got a shipment of these books, so I'm happy to give one of these away to somebody. I do have a signed copy for Becky, just so you know.
And I know Becky likes Oswald, so she'll be thrilled with that.
This is so great. I mean, I am just so thrilled with the reaction and the participation that's coming through, and I really think that we have to hammer away over the next through September 26th, because we just really need to get as close to 1,000 people to purchase the pre-order the book, so to speak, because if that happens, we're able to do this whole book.
So I'm thinking off the top of my head. I'm not sure if this makes any sense. So what if anybody what if we did this? Anybody between now and Expo that supports the book on Kickstarter, I'll figure out a way. Indiegogo. I'll find a way for them to send me a copy, like a screenshot of their receipt or something. Anybody who buys a copy of the book between now and then is entered. We'll randomly draw one for a copy of the Oswald book.
I will go with that. Does anybody out in the audience have any other suggestions? Everybody agree with that? Any comments from people? And by the way, any questions? We were going to do some Q&A.
we completely skipped by the. I was trying to read questions as they were coming by. So. Ann Lacey says, whenever you call a movie a picture, it reminds me of my dad, who was also in New Jersey, born and bred. I was a lot of Oswald. Jamie Wright says we need a book about Dave Bossert.
I'm saving the tell-all for years from now.
Right. I want the rights to the tell-all. I want the Dave Bossert, Dave After Dark. Let me just see if there's any kind of questions. Melanie said there was a question. Yes, I'll just quickly look and see. Try just picking names that rhyme with Fred, said Fred. So let me just quickly scroll back because they're coming sort of through fast and furious here. Keith Groshans has the original Oswald book. Darlene Nagy says it's so cool. Okay. How somebody said? Oh, so Melanie Jones says. Let me put this up. Who is your favorite Beauty and the Beast fan? Asking for a friend. Melanie Jones.
Melanie's my favorite Beauty and the Beast fan. I love her. She is wonderful. I see her, I see her at least a couple times a year, it seems like. Yeah. I haven't seen her in a while, but I follow her on Facebook. She's always going down to Orlando.
Melanie and her husband are really, really good people. So
yes. And that's just a great example, Lou, of the people that, really enjoy these films, it's to me that's a big joy to any of us who had the pleasure of working on those movies is to meet people like Melanie who are just super fans of those films. She loves Beauty and the Beast, and Beauty's a great movie. It's a great story. And even though they're doing live action versions of some of these films, it doesn't take away from those animated films. Those animated films are always going to be there for people to enjoy. Right. It's just, the company's giving the public choice on how to consume those stories in different ways, and I think it's fantastic. And it's what Walt was doing, translating animated films into theme park attractions,
Aaron Morgan says, "Is there a new project? Is there a new project that you're working? Is there a new project that you are specifically excited about that's coming out of the Disney company?"
Okay, let me see what is exciting. I have to tell you. You're sitting in the Spider-Man chair. I really am looking forward to seeing more Thor movies.
Love and Thunder. Love and Thunder is the best name of a movie ever.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to some of these Marvel tentpole films that are coming out. I'm looking forward to, Frozen 2 is coming out this fall. I'll be curious to see how that is. I'm looking forward to, there's just so much that the company is doing. It's amazing, and I'm excited about it, and I go to the movie theaters, I went to see The Lion King with my wife Nancy, and we loved it. I don't want to say it's live action, right. This photoreal animated movie, but Jon Favreau is such a great filmmaker, and I think he really did a terrific job in creating this new version of Lion King. But again, I think that if you see Lion King on Broadway, it's just a really special, spectacular experience. If you pop in the 10th anniversary DVD of the Lion King animated movie, it's a fun experience. I had the pleasure of not only working on Lion King, but working on the 10th anniversary edition, which inserted the News from the Underground sequence, and I also worked on the IMAX conversion of the movie. So again, it's just giving the audiences different ways of consuming those stories, I think is hugely important.
I'll give you just a couple of last quick questions. Going back to Claude Coates, Terry Gaff said, did Claude have a favorite idea that never actually made it into an attraction? So many things obviously get shelved at Imagineering. Anything you ever worked on or wanted to do that never made it in?
I have to laugh because I'm not sure if there was an absolute favorite, but he did work on a land for Epcot that never got built, and it was Venezuela.
Mm.
And when I first saw some pictures of Claude in a meeting about the Venezuela pavilion at Epcot, I turned and said to Alan, I mean, if they were to do that today, it would be like rioting and tear gas, and they're empty shelves. The stores wouldn't have anything, and you know what I mean. I shouldn't laugh about that because it's a terrible situation down there. But again, there's oftentimes projects get developed to a certain point, and they do get put on the shelf. But, it was funny. I was in Miami talking about this yesterday. There's projects that were developed back in the 1940s that got shelved. One of them was The Little Mermaid. Kai Nielsen, the great Danish illustrator, had done some visual development work on The Little Mermaid in the 1940s. And that got shelved. And it didn't get picked up until the 80s. By John Musker and Ron Clemens. They also were developing the Snow Queen. Mm-hmm. And the Snow Queen got shelved in the 40s, and it got shelved in the late 90s, and then it got picked up again, and it became Frozen. So it's an interesting process because projects get developed to a certain point, get put on the side for whatever reason, and it could be years or decades later that they get picked up again, and somebody tries something different with them, and they either get made or shelved again, and so it's I think it's a fascinating process, and there's plenty of great stories that have been put on the shelf, so to speak, but some in the years ahead, somebody may take some of those projects down, which would be great. Yeah,
they say no good idea ever dies, and you have to believe some of the things that are shelved might get dusted off one day because it comes down.
It's all about timing in animation. It's all about timing. It's a great idea will find its time.
And it's about great storytelling, and Dave, that's one thing that you are. You are an amazing storyteller, both with what you put on screen and what you put down on paper, and certainly what you've shared on the podcast. And tonight, I am looking forward to meeting you in person at D23 Expo. I'm going to continue to share the Indiegogo projects everywhere I can, as often as I can, as well as I know the people in the box will as well. And I appreciate not just your time today and your time on the show, but I appreciate everything that you've done to preserve the legacy and to preserve the stories and to share it with us as well.
Thank you so much, Lou. I really appreciate you having me on today, and I really thank everybody out there in WDW Radio land who's listening to this Facebook Live and watching us. I just want to thank you all for the generosity and your participation and wanting to support this book and get the word out there. Again, we just need to get as many backers as we can on this campaign so that we can go off and do this book. And we're going to deliver this book in conjunction with the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World.
Oh, okay.
That's October 2021, 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World, and I think that's really significant because of all of Claude's contributions to Disneyland in Anaheim, and then the fact that he took those projects he did and he translated them down to Orlando. And as we all know, some of those attractions are changed and improved or shortened in the case of Pirates down in Orlando. But each park you go to, there's a different experience with a beloved attraction. I mean, if the Little Mermaid ride is very different down in Orlando and really spectacular down in Orlando than it is at Disneyland, or I should say California Adventure. The Haunted Mansion is a fantastic attraction. When you go and see the version in Paris Disneyland, it's more of like a Bates Motel house kind of thing, So it's just, to me, it's wonderful how they take all of these seminal attractions and they do variations on them. I think that's exciting because when you go visit those other parks, you get to ride something that is slightly different than what you were used to, and I think that's wonderful.
I love it. Listen, man, I look forward to chatting with you some more, and again, sharing everything out about the book as well over on Indiegogo. So, Dave, thank you again for.
I was going to say, I'll keep you abreast of everything that I once I have some sort of a schedule of where I'm going to be at D23.
Perfect.
So you can share it with everybody. I'd love people, especially those people that are contributing, everybody. I mean, but those people especially who've contributed to the Claude Coates campaign, I'd love to just shake your hand and thank you personally, So I hope I get to see a lot of folks down at D23. And again, I thank you, Lou, for all your help and support and getting the word out. It's really been a pleasure being able to chat with you, and I hope we keep doing this on a somewhat regular basis because we could talk about a million things.
I say there's lots more we can talk about. Yeah, and like you said,
we've been on for an hour and 15 minutes. We could probably fill another couple hours if people wanted to listen. But I know it's getting late on the East Coast. So
awesome. Well, thank you again, man. And yeah, like I said, we'll once we know the D23 schedule, we'll get that on the calendar for people who are going to be there, or because I'm going to be broadcasting live all 3 days. If they can't make it out, they can watch it at home as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lou.
Right,
Thank you, everybody who participated during the past hour and 15 minutes. Really appreciate it. Heartfelt thanks to you all, and Becky as well.
All right, man. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Dave.
Thanks, man.
All right, take care.
Take care, Lou.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
I like that guy so much. I do, man. I don't know. There's something about him that I really, really like. And I think, again, because it does come from such a genuine, authentic place. And thanks to all of you, yes, including Becky Mankin from MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. Look, thank you to everybody. Look, I have no horse in this race other than wanting to see good things happen for good people, meaning see Dave's project come to fruition so that it can be shared with you. Obviously, I dig the work that he's done. I dig him on a personal level, and I want to see those stories being shared, especially Claude's, who hasn't. Claude, unfortunately, a lot of his stories have fallen by the wayside, and so I'm looking forward to sharing more of that with you as well. Speaking of sharing, as we start to wrap things up a little bit, don't forget this week's podcast, all about the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If you haven't listened, why not? It's an hour plus, hour and a half, maybe an hour 40 minutes or so, but all about the future of the cinematic universe, not just on the big screen, but we talk a lot about Disney Plus as well. And for those of you going out to Expo, we're going to be following along. There's going to be a lot of conversations about what's happening on Disney Plus. So if you have listened, do me a favor, share that out as well. Don't forget that in addition to the show This Week with Dave, next week we're going to do a little D23 Expo preparation and prediction show. We'll talk about not just what we're going to be doing together with Mouse Fan Travel in the booth, but we're also going to talk about, I'm going to share some of my thoughts and predictions as well. And don't forget, you'll be able to follow along all 3 days, basically from beginning to end at D23 Expo Live. So we'll have a little bit more of a schedule as we get closer. But if you don't have notifications turned on the page and in the group for the Facebook group, please make sure that you do it. That's the best way to get notified, especially at Expo, as we'll be on and off the air throughout all 3 days. Also, by the way, speaking of all 3 days, before Expo even begins, our meet of the month is actually going to be not in Walt Disney World, but it's actually going to be at Disneyland, more specifically California Adventure. Because listen, I haven't talked about food all night long, so of course it's got to be at Flo's V8 Cafe, 7:30 on Thursday, the night before Expo. I wanted to do it as close to Expo as possible to give you a chance if you guys are coming out. I love Flo's a lot, and we're going to be sitting right across from, in the outside seating area, across from Radiator Springs Racers, and we will close the place out. Corey Bassett, I see you in the box, brother. Corey Bassett is not just a good friend, a person we need to thank for all of his military service, but he is also the keeper of the box. And Corey is going to have his pack on, ready to go as we broadcast together. I would not be able to do without you, brother, so thank you so much. Craig Hargrove, it might not be at the Cozy Cone, but I'm going to stop at the Cozy Cone on my way to Flo's V8 Cafe. I'm going to sort of pregame at the Cone and then have my dinner and snacks, plural, at Flo's V8 Cafe. What else are we forgetting? Quick thanks, as always, to everybody who is part of the WDW Radio Nation family. A lot of new members joining the hundreds of you who do so much to not only help me, but really help the show, and also gives me a great way to thank you in return with some of the cool exclusive stuff we get to do there. Don't forget too, Momentum is coming up September 28th and 29th in Walt Disney World. I still have a discount code available just for you guys. I'm going to have our speaker and session announcement probably, if not the end of this week, the beginning of next week, maybe Monday. We'll definitely have that announcement ready to go. Really, really excited for what I'm going to do in terms of changes to the structure and the flow to really make this hopefully the most important and impactful one that we have had as well. I think that's it. I think that is it. Let's just quickly see. I'm sure that I am forgetting something, but that is okay. Listen, I want to thank Dave Bossert again so very much for not just joining me on the show 2 weeks ago. It was show, I don't have the link. I don't have the link. It was show 560, wait, let's see if M562, show 562 was Dave Bossert, and Keith Groshans is chanting momentum, momentum, momentum. Looking forward to seeing all of you there, and you never know, by the way, who might be up on stage speaking. Actually, I've already announced Steve Schussler is our keynote speaker, which I'm super excited about. No, he's not going to be bringing Boathouse samples, I don't think. You never know. But he is a remarkable guy and an amazing entrepreneur, and a lot of the people that I have lined up so far are people you may actually know who have absolutely walked the walk. I'm going to put one more time the link to Dave Bossert's book in here. Let me see. Upcoming event. Oh, I know what I forgot. Our cruise for New Orleans. I know a couple of people who asked me last week. We, thanks to MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, have 3 different stateroom categories, 3 categories of staterooms available, still at day 1 pricing. What does that mean? It means you're literally getting the pricing. You know, the prices scale up as the ship fills. The ship is full. We have 3 cabins at day 1 pricing, meaning each individual is going to save literally hundreds of dollars on the cabin. Plus, we're going to do some fun stuff in New Orleans before, on board the ship, February 7th through the 14th, on the Disney Wonder, Tiana's Place, all the new updates and upgrades. I'm already starving, and I'm not even on board yet. Oi, the fun we're going to have when we get there. If you haven't found your New Orleans buddy, get one. If you haven't booked your trip with MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, I'm trying to quote Toy Story, get one. Do it. Lots of good stuff coming up. We got Italy to talk about. We have stuff on the board and stuff on the Post-it note. Becky, if you think you want to see what's on the board, you probably really want to see what's on this Post-it note. Don't try freezing it because you're not going to be able to read it. But there is lots and lots of good stuff coming. Speaking of lots of good stuff, you guys are the epitome of good people good stuff and an amazing, amazing community. I am truly, truly blessed to know you and call you my friend, whether we've met yet or not. So I want to quickly, once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for your time and your support and the love and everything else that you do. I would not be able to do this if it was not for you. And MEI and Mouse Fan Travel for all your vacation planning needs. By the way, Becky, I'm kickstarting a book starting tomorrow. I'm kickstarting that project right there, and just so I'm gonna pull a Dave Bossert. So listen, I will see you guys next week again. We're gonna talk, and I'll answer all of your questions about D23 Expo. I cannot wait to get to Expo and see you guys. Don't forget, our meet of the month is going to be at Disneyland. So we're going to be out for Expo. I hope to see you at Flo's V8 Cafe. Finally, most importantly, I could not do it without you, and I love you oh so very much. So until next time, thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing and inviting your friends to be part of our community. I love you guys. See ya.